Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. I hope you guys all had a Merry Christmas if you celebrated it, but in terms of the weather we are now turning to other things because the pattern has the potential to turn a lot more interesting as we move from 2024 into 2025 with the possibility of storms, snow, heavy rain and then maybe something colder as we go into the new year. I thought I'd start off though by showing you the weekly mean pressure anomalies. This is from the European model, and this is quite a good indicator of the general background weather pattern, the kind of large scale systems at play. And this is the chart for the week of 30th of December to the 6th of January, so right around the new year. And what the area of pink is showing is high pressure or above average pressure across parts of the North Atlantic, Iceland up towards Greenland. That's basically the main factor there. And then another interesting thing to note is the area of troughing or below average pressure across Scandinavia into parts of Northern Europe and Russia. So those two things together, if you extrapolate out the surface wind pattern based on the fact that wind flows clockwise around high pressure and anti-clockwise around low pressure, you would expect some sort of a northerly wind like this across parts of the UK and Ireland. And this is generally a pretty good thing because it can really obviously the source region for a northerly wind is up in the Arctic where it's very cold, so generally northerly winds are pretty chilly. But we've got one complicating factor here which is going to make this potentially fairly interesting, and that is we still have a quite strong signal for low pressure across the Atlantic itself. It's not completely blocked out. And that actually means we're going to continue to have the jet stream pushing in here, and potentially as we get these low pressure systems moving up from the south, we're looking at an interesting clash occurring across the UK during this kind of general rough period of 30th of December to the 6th of January. If you look at the next week, we then start to see that pattern break down. So the high pressure starts to collapse into itself and as it does so, it shifts to the southeast. So that colder air is going to be more displaced into mainland Europe, and it will still be chilly when this does occur, but more settled and not really much risk of properly exciting weather. But it's kind of this transition and the battleground that has the potential for storms, maybe even some snow, but we do know right now this pattern is likely to be quite short-lived, maybe a week or so, as you can see here. In terms of what this might look like in the models, I thought I'd show you the Atlantic charts just to give you an idea of what's going on in the evolution of this setup. So this is showing the mean sea level pressure, so similar to this chart here, but just on an individual kind of at one exact time. It's also showing the pressure at 850 hectopascals. That is the temperature at the level where the pressure equals this value here. So that's roughly 1.5 kilometers above the ground. That gives us a nice idea of the air masses at play. And you can see for the last couple of days, including Christmas, we had high pressure across mainland Europe. And so it was really quite mild for most places, especially in the south and southeast. Cloudy as well. We did have some rain across northwest parts of Scotland, Ireland and Northern Ireland. But this pattern is generally continuing as we kind of go through the next few days. High pressure to the south of us, nothing particularly noteworthy. But then notice what starts to happen here is we get high pressure building up to the north. This is off the chart. We also then get an injection of energy, which kind of translates down over here, and we get a low pressure system across the kind of north and east. And actually, we then start to pull in a fairly cold northerly air mass by the 2nd. That's the kind of one potential scenario that we're looking at now. But look how far away it is. I mean, this is just a little bit less than a week off, which may not seem like that much in normal times. But yeah, anyway, you know what I'm trying to say. That might not seem like that much normally, but in terms of the weather, that's quite a long period where things could change. The forecast is very uncertain. But we do know this is the broad evolution supported by what I showed you earlier, and actually the models have fairly good agreement on something similar happening with kind of a cold spell, northerly winds around the kind of 1st or 3rd. But the thing I'm most interested in about actually is what happens just before that, the transitional period. And that's because we still have this low pressure system in the middle of the Atlantic here. It's dragging up some abnormally warm and moist air from the tropics, and actually over the next few days, as we head into the new week, that's going to inject energy into the upper air, and that's actually going to really aid in the development of this low pressure system here. And potentially we're going to look at a very deep and possibly impactful low pressure system right around the 31st to the 31st of December, 1st of January, and you can see that quite nicely there. There's the added energy into the system. We've got the temperature contrast from the jet stream, and there's that low rapidly developing across the North Atlantic into the UK and Europe. So I'll show you a couple of different scenarios now, and I don't want you to take it too literally because there is still quite a lot of uncertainty. But actually, we are already starting to get into that cold spell across just the northern half of Scotland. As you can see there, we've got cold northerly winds in place, and that's because that high pressure is already now building across the northern latitudes. So snow showers possible across Scotland on Sunday into Monday. Now, potentially, we're looking at a weather front crossing into that pattern. So actually, parts of Scotland, especially above high ground, right now, do have a chance for snow on Sunday into Monday. Model agreement is not the best, but it is just about there. I think we can confidently say, I mean, this is the icon here. I'll show you a couple more. We can confidently say that we are looking at a snow risk here. I mean, the ARPEGE, the French model, much more confined to high ground. We can take a look at the UKV, actually. I don't know what's that showing. That's showing some... Actually, that is showing a fairly decent snow threat for parts of northern Scotland. So I do think, yeah, this is definitely something to look out for. Probably looking at around 5 to 10 centimetres or so. This is showing even more. Potentially, though, across high ground, lower levels seeing less. But the snow risks clearly starting as soon as Sunday, Monday, though admittedly not for too many people. But then notice what happens as we go into kind of New Year's. This is the latest one here. Shows quite an elongated low pressure system. As you can see, the centre of low pressure is very large. Now this can give quite increased levels of uncertainty and difficulty in the forecast, because you could be subject to maybe the low pressure system develops further west or further east along this kind of section. The weather fronts are larger. Generally, it's less favourable for a high confidence forecast, and you can see that quite nicely here, because we get multiple kind of interesting different evolutions. And if you look past on the past run, none of that stuff was kind of visible, and if you go back even further, it's all kind of a different scenario. But I'll show you the latest ones and kind of talk about the likelihood of that right now. So the latest GFS is showing another rain band pushing into parts of northern Scotland, turning to snow there. But the most interesting bit is the energy I was talking about from earlier gets injected northeastwards and then develops into its own kind of secondary low pressure system with actually quite strong winds. 60 kind of 70 mile an hour wind gusts there. And then on the northern side, that turns to snow, potentially blowing snow across northern Scotland, and that leads into kind of a cold northerly wind. We can take a look at a couple of different models, because like I said, the uncertainty is really quite high. And if, for example, if you look at the European model there, it has a fairly similar evolution in that you get that band of snow pushing in north, and then you get the secondary low developing, and actually it's quite a powerful low. You can see probably winds of around 60 mile an hour roughly here, but then you can see also on the northern side it then does develop that snow risk with a cold northerly following it behind. But the kind of thing to note is that it's a lot further north, and so basically the point here is that even though it's kind of just 5 days out, that is a lot of time, and you should not be taking exact model runs super seriously. There's quite a wide range of different possible positions for this low to be, and so where any associated snow will occur. We do know though some places are going to see heavy snowfall. My opinion, probably going to be northern Scotland. On the southern and western edge of that, we're going to see strong winds. Right now I'd say western coasts, Ireland, Northern Ireland, Wales, Scotland probably most favoured for that at the moment. And then somewhere is also going to see a lot of rain, probably parts of northwest England. But like I said, the forecast uncertainty is very high. I'll do much kind of more detailed further updates as we get a better idea of the forecast. Let's see if I can actually show you. Let's see, should we do mean sea level pressure for kind of the 31st? Yeah, so this is the kind of MOGREPS chart. This is the ensemble from the Met Office, and you can see each of the different scenarios has a large amount of disagreement in position, intensity, and so kind of ascertaining how high the snow risk is going to be is quite a challenge, especially at this range. Let's see what we've got in terms of the kind of snow depth chart. Remember, don't take these scenarios literally. It's essentially just indicating the widespread kind of range in possible scenarios. Though I would say right now the best place to be is probably northern Scotland, and that's going to be as we turn into the new year. Now, in terms of what happens behind that low pressure system, we've got a fair amount of uncertainty. Now the model runs today have trended towards something slightly more significant. This is showing a fairly decent northerly flow, quite cold. It will definitely be feeling chilly with the risk of snow on northern coast. I just personally don't think this is that likely, and I will show you this, the GFS is the same thing. So I think it's probably not worth looking too much into the models, because I think that the current MJO, this is kind of the background signal for the blocking, is probably around the phase kind of 5 trending towards 6. And if you look at 5 trending towards 6, you do have hints of blocking, especially in 6 here. You can see it there, but it's not particularly strong. And I think we're probably looking for a tendency for that high pressure to collapse and to flatten. So instead of maybe being a really kind of, I'll just show you what the model has here instead. Maybe instead of being a really properly cold northerly or northeasterly like this has here, we're probably more likely to see a high pressure which is further south, and then instead we probably get more of a northwesterly. And that is really what the models were showing kind of the last previous runs. Yeah, you can see out there, this is much more moderate, high pressure closer to the UK. And so while it's true that there is high uncertainty, and while it will be cold either way, I think historical kind of model tendencies has been to correct towards this kind of scenario here. So while I think this 12 o'clock kind of set of model runs with a better kind of more defined low right here, I think that's worth watching, but personally I wouldn't trust it, and it's so far away, around a week out from now. So generally that's kind of my current thoughts on the forecast, but it's worth saying that the potential is there for colder weather. I can try and find some ensembles here. Let's see what we've got. If we get the, maybe, I don't know if they've got the kind of charts on here. Here we go. This is what I was after. But essentially, you can see everywhere in red here. This is the 850 hectopascal temperature, and you can see everything in red. Better change the color. There's a very large kind of range and uncertainty. We do know it will likely be turning colder, at least for a time, after that low passes through around New Year's. But what happens after, it's really kind of anyone's guess. And right now, I think we're probably looking at a scenario closer to what previous model runs had, like kind of something like this. We get a brief cold snap just after New Year, a disruptive low on New Year's Day, and then after that probably return to kind of more westerly conditions. But then that's quite far out. Models are likely to change. The one thing I would say is that as we move into the new year, we are transitioning from phases 7 and then into into phases 7 and 8 of the MJO. Just a reminder, that's the kind of convection around the equator, around the tropics, and that can often influence where we get our high pressure developing. And in particular, phases 7 and 8 are generally the most favourable for colder weather. You can see this is the pressure composite for phases 7 and 8. That's where the high pressure generally trends to the north and the northwest, which means for us, we're looking at a northerly towards an easterly flow at times. So I'm not saying that's going to happen, but the background support is giving that a high probability of that happening as we go into January. So anyway, that's about it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you watched this far, hopefully we'll get better confidence soon and I'll give more updates. But anyway, have a great rest of your evening, and bye-bye. Thank you.